Welcome to the Dating After Divorce podcast. I'm your host, Shade Curry, and I believe every divorced woman deserves a romantic relationship where she feels safe, loved, and cherished. You can create the most amazing life after divorce, and I will teach you how. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Dating After Divorce podcast. I have here for you another episode of the remarriage series. And today I will be interviewing Ksenia Barton. Ksenia is a life coach, so she's a colleague. She's also a graduate of the Life Coach School. She's a general life coach for Gen Xers, which is such an intriguing group of people. I am a Gen Xer also, so this is great. But I will have you introduce yourself, Ksenia. Welcome to the podcast. Let the listeners know who you are and what you do.
Thank you so much for having me on, Shade. This is awesome. So I did a survey of Gen X men and women, and I found their number one concern is just feeling overwhelmed by how complicated their lives are. So our bodies are changing. We're starting to have health problems. Our parents are needing help for the first time. And meanwhile, we're raising and launching children, even as work is more demanding than ever. So through life coaching, I help my clients feel in control and alive again.
Awesome. Well, that's amazing, because I feel everything that you listed there. And you work with both men and women, correct?
That's right. I really enjoy supporting men and women. So many Gen Xers are the leaders, our families, our communities, our workplaces, and we have a really important role to play, sometimes underestimated in society.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've seen some of those memes that say how like we were the latchkey kids, and people still ignore us now and think we're not here.
I hear from my clients that they really feel that way. They really experience that a lot of what's reflected back to them in society is not about the life stage that they're going through and the burdens and challenges that they're facing.
Yeah, well, awesome. That's amazing, amazing work. And I know your clients are really lucky to have you. But I heard your divorce and remarriage story a couple of weeks ago, and it was just the best. It was the best story. I can't wait to hear it again today as we record this. And I know it's just going to be such an inspiration for my listeners, just walking through everything that you went through in your divorce and how you came out on the other side and just your thinking. And what really amazed me was how the way you started to think about things differently along the way. So I'm going to just let you get started. Tell us what happened from the divorce to when you got married again.
Okay. Well, it all started New Year in 2010. So that was 12 years ago. My ex-husband told me I'm moving out. And 2 days later, he had moved out. And I was completely shocked. I was a homeschooling mom at home full time with my 4-year-old and my 6-year-old boy. And I was devoted to my family. And there was we had definitely been experiencing marriage challenges, but I never dreamed that it would lead to divorce. So it was very sudden and I was in shock. And to be honest, I was a mess. I just was brokenhearted. I couldn't accept it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that would have been like a lot of grief. Like it's sort of like if a loved one dies suddenly. And I know a lot of us who've been through divorce, we have this common feeling like someone died. It's like the family was an entity and that it died. And in your case, you didn't even see it coming. It was sort of like this, you wake up in the morning and you're making coffee and then it's like the death happens in this conversation.
Yeah, the loss was tremendous. Not only the loss of the person who I had planned to spend the rest of my life with, but also the loss of the dream of the family life that was so precious to me. And I honestly thought my kids would be scarred for life. So I was devastated by that thought.
Yeah. And how old were you at the time?
So at that point, I was 41. I thought I was super old.
Right. No, that sounds like, wait a second, I'm starting over at this, like in the middle of my life. Like I'm in the middle of the life that I love and I'm starting over. And it's interesting. You said you had marriage challenges. Did you also think that the challenges you had were like just normal marriage challenges and you were going to get through them?
Well, I knew it was serious, but I just thought, well, if I work hard enough at it, if I understand, if I can figure this out. I just have to love more, understand more, be more, do more.
Yeah. Wow.
So I think in a way I was operating from a feeling of I'm not enough. And that's why this marriage isn't working.
Right. And in the middle of trying to, I guess, work your way up to your worth, it still ended. So that adds another layer of, I wasn't good enough. I was working really hard and I still couldn't get to be good enough.
Yeah, I felt like a failure.
Yeah. So what happened next?
So the way I described my journey when I was a little further into it was first breathe, then heal, then start living. And that's what I did. It took time. So at first I was just shell-shocked. I was struggling to just cope. My entire life was focused around being there for my kids and being a good mom. I'm like, no matter what happens, I'm going to show up for my kids. They are not going to suffer because of this. And so that was my focus. And I started to reach out for support. And I didn't know anyone who's divorced. So I joined a marriage crisis community and I'm like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to join this community and I'm going to figure out how to get my ex back.
Yes. And well, we are encouraged to do that. You know, so many of a lot of the responses that come, and I can understand, well, like if someone's on the outside looking at this marriage that gets broken, they didn't see everything that was happening for years and years. So they're like, oh yeah, no. You should fix that. You should probably put that back together.
Yeah. So I joined this online community. It was all anonymous. So I just poured my heart out and other people were doing that too. So just sharing, how they were trying to get their ex back and their hopes and their struggles. And, we were giving each other feedback on like what we needed to do to heal. And it almost started turned into blogging or like writing in my diary, but online in a way that other people could read, but it was totally anonymous. So I didn't care. I was just laid it all out. I was naked online. I just was very vulnerable. And I kind of used writing in that community as a way of processing my thoughts around what was happening and also setting intentions of like, oh, this is what I'm going to do today to feel better. I'm going to go for a run. I'm going to take my kids to do something fun. I'm going to do something that's going to create a memory for the future. So I just started sharing that way and other people were sharing their journey too.
What kinds of things did you do to try to get your ex back? Just totally curious because I was not into getting my ex back at all. So I want to hear for those who were trying to get their ex back, what were you doing?
Well, I mean, a lot of people in the community were doing things that obviously didn't work, like chasing after their exes and begging. And so we all figured out that didn't work. But I thought, well, if I just become awesome enough, they'll realize what a terrible mistake they made. So I just worked on being awesome.
Which is actually the best thing you could have done.
It is because it shifted from being about him to being about me. And it's like, wait a minute, who do I like? Who do I want to be? What do I think is awesome about myself? And I started just focusing on what I enjoyed, listening to music that I used to listen to, taking dance classes, starting to run, just coming out of my shell because, it wasn't a happy marriage and my life just revolved around kids and my ex and And I just started to come out of my shell and just create some space for me to be me.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And you had told me earlier that like it took you about 6 months to realize that this
Yeah.
wasn't going to work.
After 6 months, I gave up. At that point, I was feeling pretty good. And suddenly, men started to pop out of the woodwork. And I did start dating, which is kind of funny because I really didn't do a lot to like seek out dating. I was on an app and I dated one guy from the app. And it was other guys that I dated were just people, someone I knew a long time ago, someone who was a friend. And so, but that was fun, but it was a very different experience than what I was going through privately, where I was just really working on myself and trying to explore like, well, what does a healthy relationship look like? Who do we want to be when we're in an intimate, committed relationship? And that was a lot of things we were talking about in this community.
Yeah. So when you said, was there a conscious shift to date at that point?
Yes. Yeah, there was. I mean, it was sort of like, okay, well, I'm ready to do this now. And like, I'm ready to start dating. And it's funny because at first, at the beginning of the separation, I seriously thought I was going to be a nun forever. And my sister is like, your kids are so rambunctious. Like, you're never going to find a guy. And I'm like, yeah, you're right.
Yeah. And none of those thoughts are true. I have so many clients who have those thoughts, like no one will accept my kids. And, and I promise you, ladies, there is someone, it's a specific someone who is created to accept your kids. I
Not
have a
just
client
accept them, but my kids are a blessing to my husband.
100%. I have a client who's getting married this month. And she worked with me for about 4 to 6 months, met her. Now, I guess he'll be her husband in just a couple of weeks. And one of her big concerns was she had a special needs daughter, who, will always be sort of like that childish mentality, even as she grows up. Right. So she's just going to need care for the rest of her life. And what I love about this client of mine is that she thought her daughter, she was like, her daughter is amazing. My daughter is amazing. She needs a lot of care, but like, there's someone out there for her. Right. And we just went out and found the person who was out there for her. There is someone out there for every scenario.
Yeah, my son had learning challenges, and that's partly why I was homeschooling. He really needed something special. And so a lot of my energy went into supporting him, but he's not necessarily someone you wanted to take to a fancy restaurant or civilized situation.
Yeah. No, totally get it. I have 2 biological kids and then 3 kids adopted out of foster care at the time of my divorce. And it's like, hey, full house.
Wow.
Right? Yeah. Amazing. So there's every combination has a person who's like, yeah, this is exactly what I want. So you had said earlier that you started working with a coach about that time and how that changed your thinking. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. I sought out. I was in therapy, and to be honest, it was not helping. I was a mess, but I think what I was bringing to therapy is just feeling like I was broken. And so, of course, because I went to therapy feeling like I was broken, going through therapy almost reinforced that for myself, because that was my self-concept at the time. And through coaching, I really explored my beliefs that my children would be scarred for life because of this divorce. I had so much trouble letting go of that belief. And through coaching, I was able to start to question that thought and go, they actually don't act like they're scarred for life. They seem fine. I'm the one who's the mess.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah. And I've said this and I experienced this too, is that they just want to know that you're fine.
Yes.
And if they can look
Yes.
at you and be like, okay, mom's fine. I don't have to worry about her. I can go off and be a kid.
Yeah. And I was projecting so much onto them. I was a much more sensitive child than they
Mm,
were, you know.
mm.
They were very resilient. They were bouncing when, you know, there was shared custody. They were bouncing back and forth and they were okay.
Yeah. So how are they doing today, 12 years later?
Oh my gosh. I am so proud of them. My 15-year-old girl is just so self-confident and full of life. She's super creative. She's just a delight. And my son is 18. He's graduated from high school and he's doing an acting diploma. And
Oh my
he's just
goodness.
confident and excited about it. And I could not be more blessed.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And that's just really, it's an end that you can't see in the beginning, but you want to start to visualize and start to like build hope versus the
Yeah.
the fear that, oh, those poor kids and what about them? It's like this is just the beginning of their journey too.
That's right. And they've told me that how I handled the divorce and remarriage and shared custody and all of those things made a big difference for them.
Yeah, awesome. All right, so let's get to the good stuff. Not that we don't love the children, we love the children, but we want to hear about how you met your husband.
Right. So in this online community, it was anonymous, but people got to know each other and follow each other's stories. And there was one point where I just started private messaging with one of the people in the community because honestly, I think I was asking about some gossip about somebody else. I think it was like, I was worried about someone. I went back and checked. I was worried about someone and checked in with this other community member and to find out what was going on. And then we just started chatting and, it was a little flirty, but it was friendly. It was just friendly, like this and that, chatting back and forth and very casual. And the idea of having a relationship was the last thing on my mind. I'm on the west coast of Canada. He was on the east coast of the US.
Wow.
He was a bachelor with 4 dogs. He was a smoker, and I was a super granola, like homeschooling mom.
So when you say bachelor, was he divorced also, or just
He
had
was
always been single?
No, he was divorced because he had gone through this marriage crisis as well of being dumped by his
Got
ex.
it. Yeah.
So he had never had kids in his life. He was raised as an only child, so he'd actually never lived with a child in his life. And so it just, honestly, it never occurred to me. It was just like friendly, because we were supporting each other and being there for each other. So we just started messaging back and forth, and it just turned into a routine where it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to go walk the dogs. Oh yeah, well, I've got to hit the math books with the kids, I've run them around outside in the park and now we're going to get down to the math. And we were just started sharing our lives and talking about some of the things we were talking about in the online community of like how to become the people we wanted to be. We were all trying to not make the same mistakes we had made in the past. And so from the time that we started messaging back and forth to when we met was 6 months of almost daily, chatting back and forth. And then eventually we started phoning really often. And
when did the shift happen? Because somewhere in between the beginning of the messaging and meeting up, something shifted there. Like, did you know when something shifted? Did someone say something?
It was really gradual. When we first started messaging, we were both dating people in real life still.
Oh.
And so, sometimes it was like, hey, how did your date go last night?
No judgment. I was just taking it in.
I mean, there were no gory details, but it was just, we were just friends, then that's how we were showing up for each other as friends. And it's like,
Right.
I'm here for you. I care about you. You're a person I care about. And what started to shift, I think it was gradual, but maybe after about 3 months, I started to realize, I don't want to be dating anymore. It just felt so meaningless and empty compared to the intellectual, and connectedness that I had with my now husband at the time.
Yeah. I love that the words that you used to describe that was like dating felt meaningless and you had this intellectual connection and you had like this sort of like this robust interaction with this person. And one of the things that I try to convey to people who are dating is that dating in itself is not what creates meaning or meaninglessness. It's the people that are involved.
Yeah.
Right.
And who you are with them too.
Yes. There's like you, then there's them, and there's what's created between the both of you. And all three ingredients have to work. And I hear a lot of women they'll be dating someone and it feels meaningless, but they keep trying to make it work because they're trying to create what you had with your husband with someone who does not have the ingredients to create that.
Yes.
So all the other people you dated, they just weren't the people.
Yeah. And it's different thoughts. The fellow I was dating, my thought was, oh, this is fun. And this is not a big deal. This is just casual dating, whatever.
Yeah.
And the thoughts I had with my now husband was, I care about you. I want to know you. I want to know everything about you. And I'm going to tell you the truth about what's going on for me, even the parts that are really cringy.
Yeah. Do you think if you had had those same thoughts, like with that person that you were dating, things would have been different? Do you wonder exactly how divorced women just like you are meeting eligible men who want a real relationship and a commitment? They're doing it by dating with their core values. Your core values are the GPS that lead you to the partner you've been looking for. When you use your core values on dating apps, text messages, and at social events, you will easily connect with your true match partner without chasing, settling, or wasting time with non-committal men. I have taught exactly how to do this in the 2-hour Core Values Dating Blueprint course available on my website, shadecurry.com/dating. That's SADECURRY.com/dating. You will learn exactly how to identify your core values and use them on your dating profile, how to ask the right questions via text, and how to tell the right stories on dates so that you attract the right people and repel those who aren't right for you. If you're ready to meet your true match, hop over to shadecurry.com/dating or click the link in the show notes. Now back to the episode.
People select themselves into your life based on how you show up with them. And so, I'm sure there are a lot of people who were turned off by who I was in that online community. But the more I was myself, the more I attracted someone who was like, oh, I see something in her that's special.
Right. Oh,
and I
really
didn't
powerful.
show that. I didn't show that side of myself in dating. I wasn't as vulnerable, honest.
So there's no way, there's no way to know how those people would have showed up if they had seen the Ksenia that your husband saw.
Yeah. I mean, I think the fellow I was dating, I don't think he was really looking for anything serious. And so that never would have been that with him. But if I had dating in a different way, there would have been more opportunity to evolve that way.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. Thanks for sharing that. All right. back to the story. So,
so I stopped dating, and our conversations just got, deeper, and, there was starting to be a genuine sense of affection. And, one day he said, "Do you want to go on a trip?" And I'm like, "Sure, where are we going?"
oh my God, you were up for it. Like, I love that. I love that you were like, "Yep, I see where this is going. I'm ready."
It just got to the point where we had to meet.
Yeah.
We had to know, is this real? What we have, this connection that we have.
Had you seen pictures? You
I
shared
had seen photos of him. We had like a couple of video chats. Like, it wasn't, at the time, that wasn't something that was common for me to do. So we had sort of organized a couple of video chats on Skype, and usually his 4 dogs were in the background going absolutely berserk, and my kids were coming in and out. So it was like, sometimes it was tricky to arrange. So I knew what he looked like. He knew what I looked like. So
yeah.
And
how did you create safety in that situation? Because I know for a lot of people dating long distance like that, basically, there are a lot of situations where women are on the phone with someone they met on an app or met on social media, and they're talking and they're texting, and it feels safe and it feels right.
Yeah.
But then the actual outcome isn't your outcome.
Yeah.
What was the difference between what you were experiencing and what someone who maybe gets scammed or is in an unsafe situation, or the person turns out to just not be a good person? What's the difference?
Well, I say trust, but verify. I mean, I looked him up. I Googled him. I checked out the company that he was a partial owner of. I actually did my research. As I got to know him, I was always kind of keeping track of whether what he said, if anything, didn't sound consistent. I'm not the most trusting person.
Right, so, exactly. And then I think women struggle with that because they do want to stay safe, but then they also want to take chances. And, I've had clients who've had bad experiences with, like, before coming to me, like, "Oh, I did a background check on that guy. He still turned out to be terrible." And I was like, well, there are a lot of women who will tell you that their terrible exes will show up clean on a background check. So there are certain things that we think create safety, and they can help, but in and of themselves, they don't create safety. You can have a background check on someone, but like, that doesn't mean he's a good person or that he's the right person for you. And there are signs of a healthy human or healthy relationship, and usually more subtle signs that you can pick up along the way. Did you have any of those, like when you were on the phone, or
Well, we would talk on the phone, and I knew what his life was like. I knew he was walking dogs. I could hear them. I knew when he was at work. Sometimes he'd send me photos of the work site that he was at and what he was working on. And, he never tried to take any shortcuts with me.
That's so good.
That's something that would have been a flag for me if he was like trying to rush intimacy or trying to, get to some outcome. That was never part of it.
I love that.
We were just talking and being friends and sharing, and he was revealing things about himself too.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. It's never a formula, right? No. Every situation is just such a case-by-case situation. And, thanks for just sharing how you went through that and how you sifted through that for yourself. Right. So I know I keep taking you off track, and everyone's probably yelling at their phones like, "Sade, let her tell us what happened on the trip."
So our first date was a 10-day trip in Europe, and it was so romantic. I can't even tell you. So I flew to New York City, to JFK. I met him in JFK airport, and we flew together to Europe that night.
Wow.
And the very first day we spent together, he showed me around New York City. And the very first day we spent together, I knew that he was everything I thought he was. And I knew at that moment that it was real. Everything was real.
Yeah. So up until that point, you still had like that little, I just still need to make sure this is real.
Yeah.
You hadn't jumped in feet first. You were in feet first, but you were still like, well, when I meet him.
I was like, well, what if, I even remember Googling, like, if you fall in love with someone online, like what happens when you meet?
Okay. So I'm just going to say Google is helpful, but it's not always the most helpful. I can't imagine all the answers you must have gotten. That people probably like telling you not to do it.
I got a bunch of crazy answers. And then I'm like, well, I just have to trust myself.
Yes.
I have to trust myself. I know I have done my research. I have checked him out. I might be making the biggest mistake of my life, but I owe it to myself to take some risks here because this guy is amazing. This is special, and what we have is special.
Mm-hmm. And it sounds like you were prepared to take responsibility and dust yourself off if it turned out not to be. Like you didn't tell yourself, oh, it couldn't not be. Like perfect.
I made a promise to myself that I would have my own back if it didn't work out.
Oh,
I promised myself that I would take care of myself, that I would recover, and that I wouldn't let it ruin my life.
Oh, that should be on a t-shirt. If this relationship doesn't work out, I will take care of myself. I will recover, and I won't let it ruin my life. Like we should all be taught that in high school.
It's because it's putting your relationship with yourself first. Mm-hmm. And I know as a coach, you must be spending so much time helping your clients with that.
Yes, it is. It's a thing that, and I don't even like put it on the client. I think this is the air we're breathing, or that we have been breathing for a long time, is that our relationships are just so much more important than us.
Yes.
Versus, hey, your first relationship that you have with any human is with yourself. And from that, there's an overflow to other relationships.
Yeah. And so for me, being able to take a risk requires creating safety for myself. And that's what I did in that situation. I created safety of knowing that I wasn't going to let it completely throw me off or ruin my life or even make myself wrong for taking that risk in the first place.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. And so the trip to Europe was amazing.
It was unbelievably romantic, and we knew we were in love. It was no question at that point. I came back and I was on air. I just couldn't even believe it. And then the question was, now what?
Before you talk about the now what, so going back to the beginning where we felt like you weren't worthy, like you weren't good enough, even for the relationship you had that didn't work out and that wasn't great. How had your mindset shifted just over those months? What did you think about yourself at this point? Not necessarily because of the relationship, but in this stage of your healing after the divorce?
Before I went on that trip, I started to know that I am a catch. I am smart. I am interesting. I am fun. I am wise. I am attractive. I really started to know that for myself, to not need someone else to show me that, but to show myself that of like, yeah, I'm totally a catch. And all the time I spent by myself, and, I wasn't dating my now husband in person. So I was alone a lot of the time with myself, living my life and deciding what I wanted to think about myself. And that I started to see my value. And of course, it didn't hurt to have this wonderful man reflecting that back to me. But I started to believe it for myself before and during our online courtship.
Yeah, because what you don't want to do is say, well, I'm going to go get a relationship to prove that I'm worthy, which would have been the same thing you were doing. And I know you didn't do that. I just wanted to highlight it. The same thing you were doing in your marriage, which is I'm going to save this marriage to prove that I'm worthy. And I know a lot of women, unawares, it's just in the subconscious, I'm going to go get a relationship to prove that I'm worthy versus I am worthy and I'm worthy of the most amazing relationship.
Yes. And in my healing journey, it was just so clear to me that feeling good about myself, enjoying my own company, I knew that was the key to having a healthy relationship.
Yeah. All right. I will not ask any more questions. I will let you tell the rest of the story. I am so sorry. Let's go. You have all these gems in between. I'm like, oh, this is so good though. All right. So then you came home and you were like, now what?
So he said, well, I'm going to come spend Christmas with you. So our trip was in November, and he joined my children and I for Christmas. And we had Christmas up in the mountains in beautiful wilderness cabins. And I did my same tradition that I usually did, which was joining another family there so the kids could play together. And so that was his first time meeting my kids and experiencing a family situation. And it was so fun. It was really amazing. And then I realized, this is not a joke. He showed up, he participated in my Christmas traditions, and we went skiing and skating and throwing snowballs, cooking over the wood stove and all the fun stuff. And at the end of the trip, he pulled out an antique ring that belonged to his mother and asked me to marry him.
What? Wow. That is so romantic.
Yeah.
And so I'm guessing you said yes that day.
I said,
oh, wow. Wow,
things don't happen on the timeline that you expect.
Mm-hmm. Did you know it was coming?
No, I didn't. I mean, I knew we had to figure out the situation, but I felt kind of trapped because I had shared custody of my kids, so I couldn't move.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a business owner. And, he had 4 dogs. He had a business. He had a whole life. He was quite established so I wasn't going to ask him to uproot himself, and I certainly wasn't going to do that myself. But when he asked me to marry him, I just knew that we could do it.
Yeah, you could figure it out.
Yes.
Yeah. So who moved?
So 4 months later, I flew out east and helped him pack up his things, and we drove across the continent, and he moved in with us.
Wow, you guys have no chill. Like, you do everything in a spectacular way. We drove across the country. It was so romantic.
It was so romantic.
I love it. I love it. That's amazing. And so how long have you been married now?
We're coming on 10 years.
10 years. And what's been the most surprising thing about being remarried? Like something you didn't think about, like, or think would happen?
I was raised by a stepfather, and but my father was deceased. So I kind of knew about step parenting, and my stepfather was my father because there was no one else. But I think the most surprising is how important my husband has been in my children's lives. Even though they have an involved father who is a big part of their lives, my husband, their stepfather, is a very meaningful part of their life, and they have their own relationship that's unique.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things that I've thought about is like, I don't think young people can have too many good adults in their lives.
Exactly.
It's not necessarily about, hey, your kid needs a man in his life in order to whatever. It's more like, kind of, can a kid have too many great aunties or too many great uncles or too many great loving teachers? Like, no, that's not possible.
Yeah. I think the other surprising thing is you have to get stale. The happily ever after doesn't have to be boring and stale.
Mm-hmm.
The same excitement that I felt about talking to him and sharing ideas and being stimulated by each other intellectually, that's still there. We still have that, and we still enjoy that every day. And the care, the mutual support, and the shared values, it's still as alive and rich as it ever has been.
I love that. I love that you talk about that mutual care and support. I'd love to talk about mutual reciprocity, because I think it's something that, when most people are making their list of who they want, mutual reciprocity is not usually at the top of the list. And I teach my clients that, no, that's like the biggest thing. You can't, those are the things you cannot do without the mutual care, mutual support, trustworthiness, kindness. Like, you got to have all of those. The other things, you want those to be there too. But typically what happens is we're fed with so much from the movies that we look on the outside and we forget to, see what's on the inside. Oh, for many of us, we didn't even experience mutual reciprocity in our parents' relationships or that mutual care and kindness in our childhood. So we don't even know that, like, oh, this is what it looks like.
Yes, that's so true. And you can see what that person has to offer when you're dating them.
Yeah.
Do they want to go deeper with you? Are they genuinely curious about you?
Mm-hmm.
Something that I would encourage anybody to work on when they're dating is curiosity. It's one of the most useful emotions. Curiosity about yourself, curiosity about the other person. That creates connection, because when you really know yourself, you have a connection with yourself. And when you really know the other person, then you feel connected to them.
Oh, that's so good. That's like the most powerful advice. Like, really get to know the person in front of you. I love that. That's so good. Ksenia, your story, I heard it for the second time and it's just as amazing as the first time. I really, really want to thank you for sharing your story with my audience. If you had to give, and I know you've given so much advice throughout the episode, if you had to give a piece of advice that you haven't given already, or even just a little bit of encouragement for my audience who tend to be, women, generally 40s plus, being divorced a little bit of time, are dating, some are thinking about dating, worried about whether they should date. What's the best way for them to make that decision to get started or to keep going? Like, for some of them, it's like, well, I got started, but I don't know if this is working. What's a piece of advice that you could give them?
Be the person you'd like to date. Find yourself attractive. Be the most attractive version of you to yourself. Do the things that you think are fun. If you like sunsets on the beach, go find that beach and walk on it. Do every single thing that you want to do with a partner. Do the dancing, do the hiking, do the beautiful family events, do the whatever it is, going to restaurants. I went to restaurants by myself. I went to movies by myself. I tried to go and do every single thing that I would want to do with a partner, and I did it myself a lot of the time.
So good. That is the best advice. There it is right there. Because that process changes you and you see yourself differently and you change your experience, which changes your energy, which changes your ability to attract or be visible or interact with someone.
And you change your self-concept when you're, I used to be the kind of person who'd be at home feeling lonely and miserable and crappy about myself. But then when I started taking dance classes, I saw myself as I'm a person who dances. I'm fun. I love moving to music. I enjoy my body.
So good. Ksenia, thank you so much. Please tell the listeners where they can find you. If you could spell out one or two of your social media handles, remind us again what you do. So if anyone connects with that work, they can come find you to get coaching.
Well, they can find me at KseniaBarton.com. That's KSENIABARTON.com. And you can find me on Instagram at Ksenia_Barton. And I'm here to help all the Gen X women. I coach on everything. I'm a general life coach. So people bring everything to me.
Wonderful. I really appreciate you sharing your story. Thanks
so much for having me, Sade. It's just fun to share this story.
Yes. I bet I'm going to get a lot of downloads on this one. All right, everyone. Check out Ksenia's website and follow her on Instagram. Want to thank you today for your time and attention. If you loved this episode, please share it with your friends and leave a review for the podcast so more people can find it. Thanks for your time today, and I will see you next time. Thanks for listening today. If you are ready to get married after divorce, I want to invite you to download my free 8-video training specifically designed to help divorced women date with ease and get married again. Head over to shadecurry.com to get started. That's SADECURRY.com. I'll see you inside.